Regulation and capital investment were key themes of the presentations at the IIS Global Insurance Forum here at the UN. We caught up with James Vickers, Chairman of Willis Re International and Specialty, to get his thoughts on recent regulatory developments and the evolving change in mindset regarding capital strategies. Here are the insights.
I think there is a new model that's emerging. We've seen all the capital markets, the growing interest. There's maybe about $65 billion invested currently in the industry, but we also know that's just a small drop in the ocean to what is potentially available. And the challenge for us, I think, in the insurance industry is not to fight it, but how to use it and how to put it to good, to find uses for it, which means essentially to make the whole cake of insurance larger. Now that, of course, speaks to this particular conference about the protection gap. And it's fascinating to watch what we're seeing now. Inevitably, the early movers were independent entrepreneurial type funds, but we're slowly seeing mainstream reinsurers setting up their own fund management businesses and beginning the morphing process into sort of what I think will happen, sort of hybrid type companies that both accept risk on their own balance sheet but also manage risk for other people. We're seeing also some of the biggest fund managers become more interested in the business. So it's clear, it's here to stay, it's coming, and I would echo what Mike McGavick said. This is a wonderful opportunity. Capital wants to come to our industry. We need to be innovative and put it to good use and not fight against it. Clearly the significance of equivalency for a number of regimes is helpful, because regulation, we all can argue against it, but it's necessary. So making the load of regulation a little bit lighter by some commonalities, some agreement that other standards are similar is very helpful, particularly in the reinsurance industry when some of those countries you mentioned is where most of the reinsurance capital abides, but speaking less selfishly than just the reinsurance industry, it's a good idea. CommFrame, well, that is a very big question. Of course, from a sort of economic point of view, having a common regulatory standard worldwide is a wonderful thing, but I'm afraid to say I think in reality it's probably a noble cause, but a very, very difficult one to execute and implement. It will take a long time, and my only fear is that during the process of trying to work through this, we may end up overlaying far too much complication and inconsistency, which might hinder the business as it tries to grow over the next 10 or 20 years, because I do think CommFrame is probably it's more than a 10-year project. I think one of the key takeaways was what the Thai Insurance Commissioner was talking about is easing regulation, particularly in terms of distribution and micro-insurance. So actually having an understanding at a regulatory level that yes, basic policyholder protection is important, but you don't need to apply everything at the same level everywhere. That was one key takeaway. And the other key one is the law of unintended consequences, that we're seeing very well-meaning regulation which seems sensible and logical, yet it's producing perverse results, and particularly in terms of penalizing long-term investment, which is something particularly the life insurance industry is very, very keen to do, but is becoming a problem. So we know regulation is important. Policyholder protection is important, but I'm afraid at the moment we're in a period where there's a bit of inconsistency. It's becoming too complicated, and it is hindering the business, when in fact it should be helping, and it can play such a big role in making us do the right things more easily. And one of the big things that I'm particularly interested in is how the insurance industry regulation, particularly as regards the way that the insurance industry manages nat cat risk, can be shared with the wider global financial regulatory community. And that's a job for the regulators probably, rather than those who are being regulated.
For more of our coverage of the Global Insurance Forum from New York, visit the RIN TV On Demand Library.